Welcome, everyone. It's lovely to see you all in this remarkable venue. This venue has played a kind of pivotal role historically. The UN General Assembly has taken place in this very building going back to 1946, and I think it's a perfect venue actually for the launch of the campaign today, Stop the Inhumanity at Europe's Borders. And I think the campaign comes really at a watershed moment. Politically, we face a challenge in Europe. Too many political leaders are taking a unilateralist position. Collectively, we are one single humanity, and together we stand to uphold the rights and interests and needs of that shared humanity. And yet today we see a move against that. As I say, a move to unilateralism, a move to creating a them and us world, a position that sees the world divided between them, those that come to Europe seeking sanctuary, seeking safety, and us. We see it in Italy with the rhetoric of Meloni. We see it in France with the rhetoric of Marine Le Pen. We see it in Eastern Europe with the rhetoric of Orban and leaders there. We see it in Germany with the rise of a new far-right party that's gaining a foothold, or indeed here in the UK. We even see it in Sweden, once held up as a prime example of welcoming refugees. But we see the Sweden Democrats taking a nationalist, unilateralist position. It's more important than ever before for us to come together and to take a stand against that shift, but also to take a stand for what we're for, not just what we're against.
Inhumanity exists at all points along the routes that people take. They leave their country in the first place because of the inhumane conditions. They're confronted with other forms of inhumanity on their journey here in Europe, whether it's the UK, France, Italy, wherever. People are again confronted with various forms of inhumanity. So our approach in the campaign will be to address the issue of inhumanity, not only in countries of destination such as the UK, but also countries of origin and countries of transit. We will be targeting our campaign at the local level, the national level, and the regional level. We think the local level is particularly important. I did a little bit of research recently. I discovered there are no less than 300 local refugee support groups in the UK, and I'm sure that that is replicated across Europe. So we really want to tap into that kind of grassroots activity that is currently taking place and bring the pressure of those organisations to bear at national level to the governments of Europe, but also, as you just mentioned, the European institutions will be a primary target of our campaign in the weeks and months to come.
We have decided to join the campaign Stop the Inhumanity at the Borders because we believe it is urgent to join forces and promote a different approach to migration with human rights at its center and put an end to violence against people on the move, fleeing war, persecution, natural disasters, or just seeking to find a better living and economic conditions. Last year, at least 2,734 people died or went missing in the central Mediterranean only. This must stop. Emergency stands by the victims of inhuman policies and is determined to jointly advocate for a rapid shift in the political discourse around migration. We ask the European governments and institutions to respect the founding values and principles that led to the creation of the European Union and of which we are very proud of. We call on the European authorities to revoke all the agreements with governments with critical human rights records, which make us accomplices in crimes against humanity. European funding should be devoted to amplifying safe and legal pathways for the inclusion of migrants in Europe. This will truly contribute to building inclusive and peaceful society. Thank you.
Hello, I'm David Yambio from the organization Refugees in Libya, and we support this campaign to stop inhumanity at Europe's border because we in our own experiences, have experienced the worst pushback not only at European borders, but due to several externalizations starting from Niger, Libya. You have pushback happening at the border of Germany, happening at the border of Greece and several European states. People are left to die on the Mediterranean. We have experienced this. We have lost loved ones on the sea because of lack of professional and international rescue coordination, which is being prevented. In our own experience, wherever we are trying to choose where to live, we have only received brutality at all borders, starting in Africa, in Tunisia, and in Europe here. We have lost loved ones. Our families, our brothers, our sisters have died at the European borders or in the process of crossing borders, and they have been criminalized. And we want justice for them and compensations. People are being criminalized. People are not given the necessity to travel, to leave their places, to go for education, to go for work. They are forced to take irregular migratory routes. We are calling on the European authorities to take all necessary measures to make sure that there are safe passages. We are talking about externalization not only today in Europe here. We look at Algeria, we look at Morocco, we look at Niger, we look at Libya, we look at Egypt, we look at Tunisia. All these places have been externalized heavily, which is impacting our life in a negative way. The coordination of Frontex today, not only on the Mediterranean, but also in the Sahara, in Mali, have killed a lot of people and have dehumanized us to the maximum extent that we can express. That's why everything drafted in this campaign is about me. It's about people of my color. It's about people who are still in Libya, people who are still in their countries of origin that does not know the circumstance that will push them to leave their place where they were born and will one day arrive here in Europe. Thank you.
Forum Refugee decided to participate because since our creation in 1982 in Lyon, France, we see a deterioration in arrival conditions at European borders. France is not one of the main countries of first arrivals, but what we observe is that mistreatment at external borders has an impact on the entire journey. Once in France, their relationship to rights is distorted. They may lose hope in their rights. Many are suspicious and far from an integration perspective. They may not trust the authorities or NGOs. Some even arrive with serious mental health concerns. We welcome people who have been ill-treated in Libya, a country notoriously known for its disrespect for human rights, and men and women who have been trafficked. That is why Forum Refugee joined the campaign and asks for the development of legal pathways to avoid death, but also mental health and integration issues. The political debates in France and in the European Union and in Europe in general are worrying because the idea behind the EU Pact on Migration and Asylum and the new French law on immigration is not to better manage migration and asylum. It's the deterrent effect. The idea that worsening reception conditions or limiting procedural safeguards, such as detaining asylum seekers or reducing appeal possibilities, will prevent exiles from coming, when it has long been proven that it is not the case. So Forum Refugee is really glad to have found the partners here reunited to spread the messages of the collective demand.
As an Afghan, as a refugee as well, to see how we're down and how we dehumanize and criminalize them, and how, you know, we see so many barbed wires, we see so many walls, and everybody seems to be blaming everyone else rather than taking responsibility. So thank you for coming together, and thank you for raising your voices. You know, there's the system of dehumanization, the system of disbelief, where even children are not safe from. It's a very cruel immigration system that we have. It's definitely broken, as the government ministers keep saying, but they have broke it, and they haven't really been able to fix it. The government plan was to make decisions on the backlog of 170,000 asylum seekers waiting last year. And so it's like a catch-22 situation. It's supposed to be a very positive thing, giving people refugee status after keeping them in a limbo and then making them homeless. And I hope, although the government and the policies and the laws are heading in the opposite direction, I hope, we find some sense in bringing it back to reality and how we need to play our fair share of responsibility. And so, yeah, we all have the capability and capacity to touch people's lives. And I think we should do it in a positive way. And I think this is a very timely campaign, and I hope people will stand behind it, although we live in a turbulent world. But there is a need for such campaigns, and we ought to be showing, solidarity and support towards refugees and helping those as much as we can. And if you can't help people, at least be kind, be compassionate and humane about it, and not send people 6,000 miles away for the sake of sending them because you just want to be, you just want to make a point. So, yeah.
ISRA's core values are aligned and almost interchangeable with those of United Against Inhumanity and its partners. And we support this campaign of collective mobilization to help rebuild a more humane approach to the asylum process at the border. And as you said earlier, together I know we can. This polycrisis of indifference has profound consequences for the individuals and communities, because our nations are choosing to openly exhibit a blatant disregard for the most vulnerable amongst us. This cannot be the country we aspire to be. The unprecedented and ever-increasing scale of deportations have squandered unprecedented billions of taxpayer funds, only to facilitate the devastation of millions of refugees that are being created almost daily. We must change the narrative with regard to these displaced humans washed up daily on our shores. Let's explore the positive contributions of refugees to our society, on the economic side, on the civic contribution, and also on the cultural one. Do lives from South Sudan, Myanmar, Palestine, Israel, Ukraine, do refugee lives matter? So many to be mentioned, but I will leave it there. Thank you.
I'm now going to ask Martin and Jean-Baptiste to come up, the co-founders of the whole initiative. So over to you first, Martin.
Thank you very much, Enver. And my job really is just to thank everybody who's made such a fantastic contribution towards this day. In terms of one question that you asked me to respond to, but Jean-Baptiste will respond to the other. This campaign is intended to be participatory, and we're going to continue until we achieve our goals. And we can do that because we're putting ourselves into it voluntarily. The people I want to thank very quickly are our hosts here at Methodist Central Hall, and a big round of appreciation, if I may, for Reverend Tony Miles and his colleague, and for Anne Masson and her team, and Tony and his team for the audiovisual work. Thanks.
Just 3 days ago, I was at the border between Italy and France at Ventimiglia to meet a group of amazing young volunteers running a makeshift information desk for people on the move. Dozens of asylum seekers had gathered there at dawn, recharging their phones, having a hot drink and playing cards, before returning to their cold tents, lining up in the dark under the highway bridge. Then I thought that we cannot allow those who want to demonize refugees and migrants to set the terms of the debate. Our common ambition is to remind heads of governments, as much as media and ordinary people as well, of the basic humanity of people on the move. Migration is a permanent feature of society, and with climate change, It will be one of the major global issues over the foreseeable future. We want to do our utmost to ensure that it will not be so traumatic for those migrating as it often is now. We certainly need a new international understanding about asylum and migration. It is well documented that the persuasive force of manufactured fears leads to simplistic and radical solutions, which history has taught us that they add chaos to crisis, conflicts to misery, and create a bitter sentiment of collective ugliness. The fear of the other, whom we complacently reduce to a religion, a terrorist threat, or a profiteer, can only be overcome through a battle of public opinion grounded on a civil society standing tall and a well-informed public opinion. This launch event is just a beginning. We invite many other organizations to add their voice to the campaign so that our demands to stop the inhumanity at Europe's borders are heard and become reality. We must make our determination clear to all concerned that we will continue until the campaign achieved its goals, as long as it takes. The responsibility of civil society organizations is to remind us all, loudly and without naivety, the right of every human being to exist and to be rescued and protected. This campaign is an invitation to our fellow citizens not to become indifferent, nor consent to brutal procedures or to inhuman treatments that are inflicted in their name. Thank you again.